Welcome to Revenue Rehab, your one-stop destination for collective solutions to the biggest challenges faced by marketing leaders today. Now head on over to the couch, make yourself comfortable, and get ready to change the way you approach revenue. Leading your recovery is modern marketer, author, speaker, and Chief Operating Officer at Tegrita, Brandi Starr.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Revenue Rehab. I am your host, Brandi Starr, and we have another amazing episode for you today. I am joined by Josh Fuller. Josh is the founder and CEO of Matic Digital, a digital strategy and talent growth agency that surpassed 1.5 million in new business in 2021, which was its first year. Despite a personal health bombshell, a client payment delinquency of nearly $500K, and post-COVID economic uncertainties. With just 4 full-time employees and about 50 independent contractors, it is Matic's stable. Josh has a lot to say about finding what drives you, trusting your gut, pivoting with resilience and humor, discovering and shaping talent, and defending the value of your work, your experience, your time, and your people. Welcome to Revenue Rehab. Josh, your session begins now.
Well, hello. Glad to be here. Thank you, Brandi.
Awesome. Well, I am excited to jump into our topic today, but before we do that, I like to kick things off with an icebreaker that I call buzzword banishment. So tell me, what buzzword would you like to get rid of forever?
The word riff has been bothering me lately. I used to play bass and I worked with guitarists and it was always a guitar riff and I never liked that either. And now it's being used, this company goes through another round of riffs. It's people losing their jobs. So yeah, I don't like that word very much. It feels like it's happening way too often.
Yeah, it is. The number of layoffs announced seems to be pretty constant. And I don't know, like usually most of the time I understand where the connection between the original use of the term and kind of the corporate slang use of it came from. But I have no idea how, a guitar riff got associated with layoffs, but I will take that in. We will get rid of that and hopefully not talk about riffs or layoffs too much.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Now that we've gotten that off our chest, tell me what brings you to Revenue Rehab today?
Yeah, so no, I don't want to talk about the layoffs. But one of the things, we're a digital studio, multidisciplinary and all of that. But one of the things that we found really interesting is with the layoffs happening, we simultaneously started helping some clients out with the independent talent market and just sort of really focusing these practitioners that have unique specialties, a unique amount of sector experience, and then of course the disciplines of anything software and brand related. And it's funny because we'll reach out to groups that may be posting that they're hiring, and they say we don't work with outside talent, and then these same groups a few months later go through layoffs, and so they don't seem to keep their employees either. So we're sort of like, but wait, we have this like pretty cool solution where we're enabling the independent worker to find interesting, meaningful projects, but not burnout, and staying on for 6 months, immersed, dedicated to a client project team, and then they roll off organically into something else, or they stay on organically and join that team full time. I think the whole myth of hire and move up in the company and it's going to be there for you and take care of you. I mean, tech has had so many different fun little shape-shifting moments already, especially with that lens of, it used to be every 2 years you change jobs. But one of the truths that really seems to be getting hit is some people that liked their growth model and their business and their colleagues and their friends, they're finding that the promise isn't being kept. They're getting laid off, and they're finding that that thing they did for 3 years was just always a planned engagement, that when the work was done, it's time to go. And so we're kind of like, well, let's just cut to the chase. Like, we've got a great, network. Let's make sure these independent folks do have a home base, do have that security, and can, hub and spoke out into these different workforces as needed, roll on, roll off, so that, the companies can start to hopefully save some face on these on the layoffs and things. And the need to produce doesn't stop just because there's revenue goals that need to be hit by job cuts. So I do have quite a passion for it. It wasn't my intention starting Matic, but we were fortunate enough to find ourselves in this position, and supporting some clients and finding people some really interesting roles that were satisfying to them, and ended up just kind of discovering that we love the teams aspect of the business, and it's something I'm really passionate about.
Really interesting. And, it's one of those things that as I talk to my peers, so other heads of marketing, and those leading organizations, like talent management, even when we are not in times of significant layoffs, is a key challenge. Like the amount of time that gets devoted to finding the right people, onboarding the people, trying to retain the people, grow the people, all of the things around the people.
Yeah.
And, even in my own career, the people part of leading is by far, in my opinion, the hardest. And so as we go into this discussion, I believe in setting intentions. It gives us focus, it gives us purpose, and most important, it gives our audience an understanding of what they should expect from our discussion. So what's your best hope for our talk? What do you want people to take away after they've continued listening?
Yeah, great question. I would, as a huge ambition, I would hope that people can, especially the ones influencing both, looking for jobs and the ones providing roles, just that, yeah, there's an inefficiency to the model, and there's a lot of options. Matic is not doing anything tremendously new. We took a staff aug fundamental approach, and we've added some personality to it. We've added some tools for our team to keep them engaged and supported when they're not working, when they're on the bench. I've got a nice background in consulting, so I was lucky enough to kind of see the you're either on the bench or you're on model, and even when you are on the bench between engagements, you're still a part of the team. You're still learning, growing, being pulled in, and being useful and helpful in other areas. So we're really trying to foster that with Matic teams, that we're not just guns for hire. So I would hope that, the hires in particular that might be listening, kind of take away that, hopefully there's a different approach. It's streamlined, it's efficient. 2-3 months from when a job rec goes out to when it's filled is pretty typical timeline. And my goodness, the amount of people that have to go be on that waiting line to maybe get to the yes and get that role. And at the same time, the hiring manager, they posted the rec when they needed the role filled, not, it's usually not a preemptive strike that, yeah, I'm looking 6 months down the line, we need somebody. It's like, no, we've lost somebody, we need somebody. So yeah, I would hope that the barrier to entry and swallowing the pill, that there's just a lot of flexible models. And yes, with the layoffs, there's a lot of independent talent now, and a lot of folks are going out independent. There were more filings for S corps last year than there were the last 5 years. Not all in tech. I don't have that stat, but this is Statista data that I've looked up. But I mean, that's significant. And we've got a pandemic and a remote world that's formed from it, and all kinds of things that have really shaped that. Yeah, what you were doing in 2019 was great in 2019, but there's just a lot of other options now.
Okay. Yeah. And I know if I think about historically, when you think about as an individual being an independent contractor, there was a lot of risk associated with that, and a lot of hesitation in having to be your own boss, and that eat what you kill kind of mindset. And then even for companies, there were blurred lines between employees and contractors, and that created some issues. And it seems like now when you are thinking about growth of a team, whether it's, replacing someone who has left, filling the gap after a layoff, you've kind of got three options. You hire internally, you bring in independent contractor or contractors, or you outsource it to an agency or a consultancy.
Mhm.
And as I've been, having different conversations about talent in the market and, where kind of the vibe is, where it used to be people truly wanted that traditional employee model, and organizations also wanted that traditional employee model. Talent seems to be changing. And so I'd like to hear a bit more around talent entering the marketplace, kind of post COVID. Even those that are more seasoned seem to have different needs and interests. So very long-winded way of asking, what are you seeing in both the changes around the job seekers and the companies in what they're choosing in filling those gaps?
Yeah. I'm seeing, I mean, there's so much. It's a big, big sector, right? So I don't have an answer for every angle, but a few trend lines that I've been following is let's take one of those. Let's take talent entering the market. So in software, there's tons of accelerator programs nowadays, which is awesome. It's like there's a lot of interest to becoming a UX designer or a Flutter developer or a expert of project management and delivery. And there are many, many accelerators out there. Google is probably one of the biggest for the UX UI cert program. And I love it. But I also see the red flags of when we're in a hiring frenzy as an industry, when Facebook is filling the seats, right? Or Meta, I guess now, or one of those tech companies pre-layoffs is filling the stable. They're out there. It's a cutthroat offer world. You've got folks that did a 4-month cert class and were promised an 80,000 or better salary coming out of it. You've got them getting into these competitive bidding wars for themselves between the Amazons and the Metas, and they're landing $120,000, $140,000 roles. Then those jobs go away, and then things tighten up, and they're the first to go. Now they've got this false sense of value that I'm worth 140 a year because I've been doing this a year now, and I have a 4-month cert on my roster, and I know how to do ideation and sticky note exercises with the best of them. And the reality is that a lot of the jobs in a more stable market just aren't going to pay for like 150 a year plus is buying a significant amount of experience and a significant amount of thought leadership coming to the table, not necessarily just the practice of the function. So what that creates is this negative effect where their second job, where it might level back down to 110 a year, now they're underpaid and now they're undermotivated. And that's the mindset. So that's a very interesting, again, I don't necessarily have a solution. I just see it. And it's like, wow, that is a tricky place. And I've been in it, 20 years. I mean, it took a long time to get to some of the salaries that I've seen being pretty close to entry level nowadays. So I feel very self-aware. I keep saying nowadays too, because I am 45. So I've been at this since I was 20. So I've definitely been around it, before UX was called UX and, things of that. But yeah, I mean, I think I love that there's excitement for it, but then you can also trace the massive influx in the popularity of these cert programs to the pandemic. The folks that were so negatively impacted because when doors shut, they didn't have work to go to. A lot of us tech people did. So it created a huge draw to the industry of just like, wait, I can make more money and never leave my house. And things like the pandemic don't even matter. Like, it's fine. So, tech is a really interesting and flexible and nimble and kind of runs at its own pace when it comes to all the sectors out there. A lot of our best work gets done from the desk. and sometimes from the desk at the house versus the desk in the office where there's, rolling meetings and in-person conversations. We have an office at Matic that we try and use once a week, just for community, but we certainly don't require it or need it really every day to effectively get the work done. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of one angle I have for your question.
Okay. And so just kind of piggybacking off of that, because our listeners are primarily heads of marketing across all kinds of different industries. But I think a lot of the hiring challenges are going to be similar. And one of the things that you talked about was, wanting to introduce kind of a new approach to staffing,
Yeah.
which is of course the foundation of by which Matic was built on. But help me to understand holistically, what is that vision for a new model of how we're staffing?
Yeah. So the thing that I really think or we call it team pairing, which I'm sure others have, but what we call team pairing is, again, at a high level, we kind of approach our talks on the client side, on the hire side, as we might an agency client. So it's a discovery. It's, it's just the questions are more tailored to the task at hand. So what kind of culture do you have? What kind of work balance? Are you guys heavy Slack shop, or are you more, daily in-person stand up and then heads down? Like, how do you operate and how do you want to operate? And we kind of try and get a good sense of the day-to-day and the team culture that we might potentially be supporting. And then like I said, we keep a pretty active roster of folks. So we'll look to match, and we'll usually send first of all, we don't even send full resumes. We send a light profile that we think synthesizes the relevant to what you're hiring for, because a lot of talent could have a lot of experience. But I've talked to a lot of hires out there that have seen so many resumes, and it's nothing ever stands out. So we actually try to help stand out that, like, this is why they were selected. Like they were literally curated for what you told us in discovery. And usually that's a couple. Sometimes it's a very narrow field. It's one. It's like, hey, this person's the right fit and available. And little metrics like time zone matter because of the remote system. It's still nice if everybody can hop on a call and be present at the same 9 to 5 or close to the same 9 to 5. And I see a future where companies lean on that model more, because it can literally be from never heard of it to 7 days later, somebody could be working and getting embedded with the client rather quickly. All for people still having full-time jobs, by the way. But I do think there are so many variables of luck involved with that long recruiting process we spoke of a moment ago, where it's 2-3 months from need to fulfillment. What if it's the wrong fit? Sure, you interviewed them 8 times with multiple people in the organization. And what if they're great at interview, but kind of rough in the room? Or did you interview, if you have client facing needs, did you interview them with a client to see how they are in front of clients? What if they're not a good fit? In a teams pairing model, if that pairing turns out to be a mismatch, there's not a whole lot of red tape to make a change. Usually the talent feels the very same way. They're like, this is not a good fit for me. I thought it would be, and it's not. And if the client's feeling that way, great, you have a chance to pivot. And it's a fairly simple, usually mutually desired pivot in and out of that situation. Not always. Sometimes it's like the client has an issue and the talent thought it was great. And they're like, well, how do I course correct? So then we work on that. And part of like a group like Matic, like we're in the background sort of, removing the awkwardness from the two parties that need to work together. And we're kind of back channeling and then surfacing solutions as best we can. We obviously don't want to have to pull somebody off of an engagement, but we will when it needs, and sometimes it's unavoidable. But what I like about this is when you go through the original model of just direct to hire, they're not a fit. You're going to spend months trying to correct that. You're going to spend months as a culture, as a commitment, as an employer. You're going to spend months to try and correct that. wouldn't it be simpler to start working much faster, start integrating somebody with the team who's been vetted and is supported by an agency that hopefully you trust, to get to work. And if it's going great and both parties are into it, convert to full time. Like convert to full time in a couple of months. It's really sad. It's a try before you buy. I mean, for everybody around, like our careers as workers, it's the thing we do all day, every day, more than we spend time with our families sometimes, unfortunately, more than we spend time doing our hobbies. We're working. That's the dotted line. It's a 40-hour week life. And so it's a pretty big decision. And on the talent, on the hiring side, same thing. You've got mission critical agendas, and the people make that come to life. And no other, like software, 100%. There's even with AI now, there will be some job shifts. I'm not as scared of job losses yet, but that's another conversation. I just think it's another powerful tool that we all have to learn how to leverage, because when Alexa came out, I didn't fear for my job, so I'm not too scared now. But it is a tool, and it's something we can use. So yeah, people are always going to be the human fuel for any engine out there, trying to ship product, commerce, goods, services, anything that's happening in the software space. It just seems like why spend all this time aiming only to not know if you're going to hit when you take the shot. So this feels a little more like we get things done, we get vetting, we're actively vetting day one towards hope, and it's okay to have a North Star that we want this person as a full-time role. We want them to be team X and all of that. That's great. Does it hurt to, instead of waiting 3 months to hire that person, to have 3 months of working with someone to make sure that, yeah, this is a perfect fit. This is amazing. Let's go full time. So
what I'm hearing is that, kind of from your perspective, the way forward is very similar to temp agencies, and the way, like, a little bit different of a model, but that same concept of the try before you buy, being able to bring someone in as an independent contractor for that temporary, that period of time,
right,
to assess what that looks like, whether it works, giving you the flexibility to get out fast if it's not a fit.
Yep.
And with kind of the approach that you take, it also allows them to get in faster as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I'll own that temp agency comparison all day. It's a first, actually, but I do like it. And again, going back to how we kind of started, there's no harm, no foul. When the engagement ends, the work is done. Like, avoiding these massive public share price affecting layoffs seems like companies would be looking for ways to do this. Yeah, because when it comes to those sort of contracts, they are a whole lot easier to terminate, or just allow to run their course and then just non-renew. It's somewhat business as usual versus the latter of we just changed a bunch of mortgage carrying employees' lives, to transition between independent talent. And that's the job of Matic, for the stable we keep, for the practitioners we're lucky enough to work with, is when the company does make the decision that this bit of work is complete and this engagement is done for now, we'll call you next time, that we have things teed up, and so that swivel door, us being an agency as well, we're always using the same talent that we're putting out to client, where it's interchangeable, and that's by design, that one feeds the other. If the studio is slow, we focus heavier on working with client teams, and if client teams happen to be not as busy, or studio engagements are much more busy, then we've got this amazing talent that we're out there vouching for every day, now working hand in hand with us. Okay, very interesting.
Oh, and I don't aim to change the world with this necessarily. Right? I think Matic is like boutique. Like, I don't think this is for everybody all day, every day. Like, there's certain, I just want to call that out, that this isn't, I'm not necessarily, I get asked a lot about the North Star and for Matic, and, I know that it's not 50,000 person workforce. It's not that. So we're not trying to necessarily say the whole world, but there's just so many use cases where it's like, this would be such a great solution to put together a 4-person product team or a 10-person squad. We're building one for a client in Latin America, which is incredibly exciting because I love going to Mexico City anyways, and have kind of had a heart for it. And the design talent, the developers there are wonderful, but the design talent, just their aesthetic is really, like, culturally, it's so alive and kind of on point right now. So it's thrilling to be able to, we're using quite a few, partnering with quite a few of our teams folks from that part of the world, but same time zone to work with our projects. And it's fantastic. We're getting insights and design outputs that just, mixes it up a little bit from the standard.
Okay. Awesome. Well, talking about our changes or our challenges is just the first step, and nothing changes if nothing changes. So in traditional therapy, the therapist will give the client some homework. Here at Revenue Rehab, we like to ask our guests to give us some homework. So for our listeners who are really evaluating what is their way forward in terms of staffing, what action item would you give them?
Yeah, I think it comes, from within the organization. I mean, I've seen people struggle for 6 months posting the same job listing, and even in my network, and I'm like, hey, we might be able to help. And they're like, yeah, we don't work with third party, like recruiters, and I'm like, well, we're not totally recruiters, but I get it. And it's like, it comes from the inside. If those are struggles that an organization is having, a lot of times these bylaws, they're all written by humans. They can all be changed by humans. It's like, hey, I'm changing with the times a little bit. Like, you've also got a generational workforce that probably didn't exist when the bylaws were brought 10 years ago, where people do want van life. They want to, which is, I'm not a van life guy myself, but they want to work on something really hard for 8-9 months, and then they want to go cruise around for a while and reset. And that's maybe very self-serving towards the creative ethos of it all, but it does seem to be I've met many developer that's also like, yeah, I like engagements, and then I take a little downtime, and and then I come back and I find a new engagement. So there's a vast talent pool out there, and they're not just renegades, and it shouldn't be a negative anymore to augment teams as needed. Most corporations have been doing it forever. We just call it consulting. So, I think the same thing could be happening at the practitioner level. Taking that same approach. So hopefully companies are open to thinking about that and reevaluating the why they have their way of working, and like, is there other ways they're not maybe considering yet that could be solving a lot of business problems.
Awesome. Well, I have enjoyed our discussion for today. I have enjoyed our discussion, but that's our time for today. But before we go, how can our audience connect with you?
Yeah, my email is great, josh@maticdigital.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm one of the thousands of Josh Fullers, but I'm the only one that owns Matic, so it should be easy to find.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Josh. I am happy to have you on the couch. And thanks everyone for joining us today. I hope that you have enjoyed my conversation with Josh. I can't believe we're at the end. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Revenue Rehab with your host, Brandi Starr. Your session is now over, but the learning has just begun. Join our mailing list and catch up on all our shows at revenuerehab.live. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at Revenue Rehab. This concludes this week's session. We'll see you next week.